Hello and welcome to Champ Select, your go-to competitive Legends of Runeterra podcast. I'm Alex. As per usual, joining me are my two co-hosts, Noble.
Hello.
And Hugh.
Hello.
And today we've got an action-packed episode. It's the week before the seasonal tournament. It's this weekend.
All through the house.
Yeah, not a creature. Every creature was stirring. Everyone's testing at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So we're probably going to be here for a little bit talking about everything. There's so much to go over. We want to start off talking about testing processes in general and how to prepare for an event like this, how we prepared as well as to help other people prepare in the future. We want to talk a little bit about tournament mentality, tournament anxiety, tournament nerves, stuff like that. That's a real part about playing in these tournaments that I don't think gets talked about enough. And last but not least, the moment we've all been waiting for, we want to talk about what the decks we're actually going to play this weekend are. We've been talking about a lot, doing a lot of testing, and I wouldn't be shocked if our opinion changes between now and 2 days from now when the tournament happens.
Given the pattern, I know my lineup has changed like 6 times in the past 6 days.
I'm quite happy with where I landed, at least for right now. So without any further ado, let's just jump straight into testing for big tournaments in general. The seasonal tournament obviously is the namesake tournament in Legends of Runeterra so far, and the biggest event of the season, right? So how have you gone about actually preparing for this event, Noble? What do you think, and what do you recommend for people?
Yeah. So first, it really helps me, especially when testing, to just kind of play kind of consistently, make sure I'm playing 2 or 3 Legends of Runeterra games a day, just to kind of stay sharp,
Yeah, absolutely.
Stay thinking about it.
It's important to not take week-long breaks or whatever. Yeah. Week on, week off stuff is usually going to lead to less consistent results than just playing 2 games a day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of admittedly have been taking a bit of time off, which I would not recommend.
It's inevitable.
Because I qualified and can't play ranked right now. So I was kind of just testing. I've been testing matchups here.
Normals is not a great environment for testing as well.
Yeah. I've been trying to figure out what Aphelios deck is good in normals, and they're all good in normals, as it turns out.
Exactly.
Turns out Aphelios is really good at dealing with Feyblade Twirler or whatever.
Exactly. So we've been doing a ton of testing through our Discord. That's been awesome. Playing scrims against people, just 5 game sets or whatever. Just if there's a matchup that you want to test, 5 games. Okay, so there's a saying in our competitive Magic group that statistical significance is 500 matches, which means that for you to know, when people say a matchup is 60-40, they don't know that at 6 games. They don't know that at 10 games. They don't know that at 100 games. They get close to knowing that at 1,000 games.
Yeah.
For actual so any win rate that we see is an estimate unless it's directly from
Riot.
Yeah, Riot. Yeah. Although those are still sketchy, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because there's variable skill level, there's variable elo level, there's variable deck builds.
There's a lot of card choices that matter a lot.
Exactly.
And all of this to be said is that I think competitive card games in general really test your ability to make to judge patterns and judge trends and estimate things with far too little information.
Absolutely.
You really need to be able to analyze 5 or 6 aspects of every given game about what cards matter, what play patterns matter, because you can't play 1,000 games in every matchup to know if it's 55-45 or 60-40 or even.
You
need
can't really
to
play 100 games at every match.
Yeah,
you can't
need to play
50.
5. Yeah. If you play a matchup 5 times, it's probably going to take you 2 hours. If you're in Discord with a friend or whatever, and that's probably about as much as either of you really want to keep playing that matchup. I mean, let's be honest, 5 of the same matchup in a row can get kind of tiresome.
Also, there's just too many permutations of all these decks.
And then if you take one card out and then try and chip again, you need to make decisions based on not enough information. And I think that really is a big factor of the panic that I usually get when I'm trying to test for these tournaments. Is there's too many things to test. I can't make decisions perfectly, and eventually it gets to the point where there's something where somebody brings up some deck and you're that could be good, don't have time.
Yep, exactly. And another big thing about this, we've said this before, we're going to say it again, test with other people.
Yeah.
Test with as many people as you can. Getting other people's insight is huge when we're talking about limited in scope. So I want to, like we just said, I want to clarify, one of my big things is I think you should avoid burnout. You should try not to play the same deck on repeat, not bump your head against a wall, make sure that you're playing a good amount of games, staying engaged, doing testing that matters. I think this is a really important point. Don't just hop on the ladder with your deck and start playing games. You will get more familiar with your deck. It will make you better at that deck. But if you are testing for a tournament, that is not data that matters. Coming to your testing group and being like, I have played one game against 10 different decks is not helpful for placing that deck in a lineup, knowing what that deck needs to ban. Because not only is 5 games not enough to know how good a matchup is, 1 game definitely isn't.
Yeah.
So
especially if your opponent misclicked or mom called them into the other room, so they missed a whole turn or whatever.
Yeah. And so sit down with a person, be talking through your plays, and be testing a specific matchup, or play a deck that you think might be good against 10 different meta decks that your friend is piloting, because you know that they're a good player. You can talk about the games and how they feel, which does make a game valuable.
Almost more important than the actual game itself is discussing the game, I think.
Yeah. So if the whole time you're talking, wow, that feels good. Oh, this feels unwinnable. Oh, look, I won. That's interesting. That's valuable.
What happened?
That's good. Yeah.
What cards do you if their card that when your opponent plays is like, I can never beat this here.
Yeah.
Do you have
knowing your opponent's perspective is
things?
incredibly important, because things feel completely different from one side. You're like, on your side, you're like, I can't ever win this game. And they might be on their side thinking the exact same thing. Like, I also can't win this game. And both of you need to discuss that. Like, why did we both feel this way?
And also at the end of the game, you'd be like, I won. That felt good. And your opponent would be like, I made a huge mistake that you didn't see, and I should have won that game. Quote unquote, should have. I actually kind of hate the word should have won the game, because
different argument for a later day.
That's so then I want to talk about 2 other things: how to avoid traps with data, and how to use the data that you do have, especially from places like Riot, and how to avoid confirmation bias. Do either of you have anything you want to say about data? How do you use data, Alex?
Data usually, for me, I really like matchup data. Just having access to it, because like I said, I can't play every matchup. So having Riot's data is great. And usually you'll have a friend that's like, this is what Riot says the matchup is. And they're like, yeah, people are bad if you just play Spirit's Refuge instead of Riposte or whatever. Then Fiora actually 70% against discard aggro.
Great example of this.
60% or whatever.
Was putting Withering Wail in TF Fizz. In
TF Go Hard.
Oh my God. TF Elise Go Hard. Yeah. For the last seasonal, actually swung the Mistrace matchup to good, which totally changed the dynamic of a lineup. So being able to critically analyze the data, be like, what makes this matchup bad, and how do we fix it?
How do I win this
and
matchup?
Not just, this deck doesn't have a good matchup against the best deck. Guess I can't play it.
Yeah, but it is a great base point. It is a base.
It is where you should start.
It is absolutely where you should start. When you think to yourself, is this deck good against X deck? The first place to check is the Riot account, because sometimes the data is very obvious. And it's like, sometimes the matchup's like 56-40 or 60-40 or whatever, even from the Riot data. And it's like, wow, this matchup is obviously terrible. Even the aggregate is 60-40 or whatever, which is almost never true.
Yeah.
Right. Usually you can get to like 60-40 or 65-35 or whatever with like certain tech cards if you specifically aim for a matchup. But sometimes there's just matchups that are just really bad and you just don't want to play against. So I think the like really obviously bad matchups are the best ones that get highlighted by the data, is the ones that you just like really should abandon.
Yeah.
And the really 50-50 matchups where maybe if you put in some work, you could find some more percentage points, but these decks are pretty much a coin flip. I think those are the 2 interesting data points. And like when you start to get into like 53-47 territory, stuff like that, then it starts to get a little fuzzier for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of like hesitating to call a deck that wins 52% of the time favored.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's a lot of variables going on. I also think that I hesitate to plug our Discord too much, but a lot of people in there, one of whom posted a aggregate match update data taking like a table, which is very easy to check. So if you want access to that, you can join our Discord and check that out. It's so helpful. He makes it for every seasonal tournament.
Super nice so far.
Huge for us.
Yeah. A really great tool. That, and then you talked about data pitfalls.
Yeah. And just basically being careful, like we said, like critically analyze the data. Be like, a lot of these decks, there's a general consensus that a matchup is bad, but like the ladder data is out of like 100 games. Like that is not enough. If one of the decks isn't being played very much, that is not enough to know whether this matchup is good. Like you should test it.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people there in any community, there becomes assumptions, and there are a lot of assumptions going around right now. For example, like Aphelios is the best thing to be doing, which we'll talk about later, but I think Aphelios is not the most important champion in the seasonal tournament. You don't need to ban the Aphelios deck. You don't need to worry about Aphelios all the time. I think that deck is very beatable, and I think that you should be acknowledging that, figuring that out, and not...
Yeah, all the hype is about Aphelios right now, but I think that's not necessarily a data pitfall that you can fall into, but I think that is easily a social pitfall that's easy to fall into, especially with the new hype thing in general. When people are really excited about new things, it's like all people talk about
the
for a long time.
The echo chamber gets very, very intense.
The echo chamber
very
starts
strong,
to get very real with stuff like that. So I think those are the data shortcomings and really do look at the sample sizes, especially because a lot of the data stuff can be hard to read. Sometimes decks get randomly split into two categories for whatever seems like no reason, but maybe they're like one or two card different. And sometimes those have just like vastly different win rates. Like I think last season, the like Mobalytics aggregate win rate thing had two TF Go Hard splits. And like one of them was like heavily favored against discard aggro, like 60-40. And the other one was like
a dog
30% to discard
Wild.
aggro. And the actual deck lists were like one or two cards different. Like there's absolutely no way that was actually like the one or two cards, and the one or two cards were like a Commander Ledros instead of like
a Ruination or something.
Instead of the third, whatever random card. You get my point. There were cards that didn't really matter that much in the matchup, and so like clearly this is a split, and this split is somewhat arbitrary. But like really, these stats should be combined, and the matchup's actually close, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
But if you only saw one of them, you would just think it was an absolute bloodbath in one direction or the other. So like. You do need to analyze the data you're using, but I do recommend using it.
And like play the games. Like don't discount. Hesitant to rely too much on your own. There's a lot of limits to an individual person's perceptions of the metagame and matchups, but don't go too hard the other way and trust the data over everything. You need to play the games yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
A 60-40 matchup is probably a 45-45 matchup if you've never played it, and might even swing the other way. That's a huge data pitfall. That's what I wanted to talk about. I remember now. It's that if you haven't played the matchup, if you don't know what's important, the matchup is not good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Your matchup is not good against a deck until you've played against it.
Yeah, that's a huge thing we found last season with Nico, Time in our Discord.
People in general.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm just using this as a specific example. We did a lot of testing. We've been doing a lot of testing for this one as well. And one of the things he found last season is he came up against Tom Rocca in the tournament, and he realized that he hadn't tested against it.
Had no idea.
And he had no idea what to do, and he lost to it as a consequence. Like,
and it was probably a good matchup or whatever.
It might have been. I don't even remember, but
it definitely makes a bad matchup worse if you've never played it.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And that particular matchup too. That deck is weird. It doesn't play like other decks. You need to know. You need to have not only played against it. I think you need to play with it in that particular instance, but that's a separate thing.
Yeah, I think that the most likely candidate for didn't test enough against this seasonal is Teemo Ezreal. That's my dark horse prediction.
Yeah,
that's my Friday night before, or Saturday night before the tournament or whatever. Maybe get your friend and test against that one, because that deck is weird to play against, and I suspect quite good. So anyway,
totally.
I think that testing for the tournament is almost always more important than what goes on the actual tournament day itself. I think that when card games come, or like card games in general, reward players who are able, or who put themselves in a position to get lucky. And
that's a great way to put that.
Yeah. And in order to win at card games, you have to get lucky, but you have to be able to be in the position to get lucky. You can't lose a match that you could have won if you'd prepped better. If you don't bring the right 3 decks because you didn't prep well, then you're not going to
have the chance to top deck lethal in the final game.
If you don't know how to play against Tom Rocca and you just get smoked by it because you didn't know they had Astral Protection in their deck or whatever, then that was a preparation failure, not a play failure. And there is a difference between preparation failures and play failures in tournaments. And you need to be really honest with yourself about when you lost a game because you made a mistake in the game, or when you lost a game because you didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And you like had a mental pitfall, or you kept a card you shouldn't have that ended up being irrelevant all game because you'd only played the matchup once or twice and it was good then, right? Like there are very real tournament pitfalls, and in order to get lucky, you have to put in a lot of preparation, I think.
You can whine about your opponent, be upset about your opponent top decking lethal, but they put themselves in a position where they kept a card in hand because the only card that could win in the game was Get Excited, and they needed to draw it. And also last turn they attacked, chumping away 3 of their creatures so they could put you to 3.
Yeah.
Like, you need to know, you need to be able to find the line. You need to have played the matchup, and you need to put yourself into the position where you can win.
Yeah, not all great players always get lucky. Not all great players never get lucky, right? Like the names that you know are the great players that got lucky. And you really just keep having to roll the dice. You keep putting yourself in a situation to be able to succeed, and eventually it'll happen.
Yeah,
eventually
absolutely.
It'll happen, right? Like, so keep putting in the prep. The prep's the most important part of the tournament in every card game. I'll basically go to my career. I'll die on that hill. I think the prep is always the most important part of the tournament.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Anything else on tournament prep, or should we get into the actual aspect of playing the tournaments and how to keep yourself under control for that? I know, Hugh, you wanted to talk about this quite a bit, because tournament anxiety is like a very real thing for a lot of people. And, whether you're playing a seasonal tournament or a last chance gauntlet or whatever, like any important match, it's hard to steel your nerves and be able to think clearly.
Yeah, there's no tilt quite like tournament tilt. And it's a bit of a different animal. There's definitely crossover with just the general idea of tilting and getting in a bad mood or in a bad headspace and just not playing well because of it. There's a certain so in the example of prep, if you come up against a deck all of a sudden that you realize oh God, what is this?
I have no idea what to do.
Yeah, exactly. What is this deck? One, it could be weird. Your opponent could be playing something completely crazy that you've never seen before, never heard of.
I lost to Swain Elise on ladder the other day.
Yeah, it could be something just absolutely like the Yasuo Thresh, and you're just like, what?
What on earth is this?
What is this? Is this real? And all of a sudden,
that's a good example.
Yeah, exactly.
What on earth would that deck do? I'm sitting here trying to think about it. I'm like, oh dear God! We got our Feyblade twirlers,
and you're sitting there, and you're looking at their whole lineup, and you're like, okay, TF Fizz, okay, discard aggro. Yasuo Thresh. And you're just like, your brain explodes and it goes into full panic mode. It is the epitome of that feeling of, I studied for this final. You sit down, question 1. What is that? What is that question? It is a multiple choice test and you don't recognize any of those words.
Yeah.
And you
thought we were Lessons Learned Terror podcast, but we're teaching you how to study for your finals in college.
Yeah. He was teaching you how to tilt off the face of the earth.
Lots of prep. Make sure you get lots of sleep the night before.
Read the first question.
And it's just
drink lots of water, read the first question, and storm out.
Yeah. It's just that feeling of sudden panic, and there are certain, okay, I know we just talked about prep a lot, and
it's the most important thing.
It is the most important thing. And please remember, there very, very well could be situations. You can't prepare for literally everything.
Of course not.
And when a situation you haven't prepared for comes up, do not panic, because you can't. It's not going to help you.
Yeah, I think that tournament tilt, for me, I would categorize tournament tilt into 2 very specific types. So normally with normal tilt, when you're just at home playing ladder or whatever, if you lose a game or you tilt off a game, it doesn't really matter the outcome. You can just take a break, right? For me, the hardest tilt to overcome is in a tournament, I'm tilted. Say I lost game 2 of my match, right? I punted it away.
And you should have won it.
I'm tilted. I should have won.
And you should have won it. And
saw now I need to play game 3. How do I mentally reset myself for game 3? I think that's the most important tournament tilt. And then there's also just the in-game avoiding tilt when you're trying to play your best game. So in between games, I think it's quite a bit different than in game, because in game you do need to refocus and try to win the game. Whereas out of game, you can take a 2-minute breather and just stand up, go get a glass of water. Even in the middle of a match, right? You'll have enough time to go grab a glass of water after you make your mulligan choice or whatever, if you need one. So, but you can't take a break, right?
No,
you can't just get up and not play the next game. You have to play. So for me, and this sounds really cheesy and corny, but I swear it has always worked for me. I love closing my eyes and taking deep breaths. I do it all the time. Whenever I'm feeling nervous or anxious or tilted and I can't get up and remove myself from the situation, closing my eyes and taking deep breaths is the best for me. I love it.
It's a lot harder when you're in person at a Magic tournament. your opponent starts to look at you weird after the
and it's
third
weird.
minute.
It's weird. It's kind of weird to do in person, but it's really easy to do at
absolutely.
home on just with yourself. You can, if you need to turn on music in the background to help yourself untilt or whatever.
Oh, music really gets me in the mood.
And I'm
in
the
the
polar
groove.
opposite. I absolutely if I have
some people
music,
would be distracted and hate it, right?
yeah, exactly, and that's one of those things.
But so that's my biggest recommendation for tournament tilt. Honestly, is in between games, close your eyes and just breathe. Close your eyes, in through your nose, out through your mouth, open your eyes. Okay, I'm going to win this game. That every time for me, that one, it immediately calms the nerves, immediately deals with anxiety. They don't go away, but they become manageable at least pretty quickly. Often, sometimes your hands are shaking or whatever. It deals with that really well. In-game tilt, I hope one of you guys has a good solution for that, because I usually just power through and play like a donkey for the rest of the game and hope I really outluck my opponent.
I actually.
I don't have like a tried and true thing. I don't have your go-to method that you got there, but something that I just try and catch myself on little things, and the thing I try and watch out for in my play the most is in tournaments versus when I just play at we're just gonna keep using Magic as an example, or ladder, FNM or ladder in Runeterra. I find myself frequently in tournaments getting safer in my play. Instead of playing to win like I normally do, I play to not lose more. And
Absolutely.
that is a bad thing to do. You need to play to win. It sounds obvious, but play to win. Do not play to not lose.
What do you mean by that?
So
it's a hard distinction to make.
Struggling to think of a good example off the top of my head.
If I may, I think I would. I'm not going to use a specific example but it's when you don't make a risky play because you're afraid of the consequences of it not working out.
Here's an example.
I think you need to be not afraid to be wrong. Is I think what that boils down to.
That's actually a really good point.
Is you need to trust yourself to make the best play. And if you think your best play is risky, the fourth creature into the deck that has Ruination, but you're not going to win if they have it. Plays like that, right? Where you do realize, yes, I do need to take this risky line in order to win this game. Otherwise, I'm just going to eventually lose.
I was going to use the example of you're on TF Fizz and you're like, do I just jam out all of my creatures into their 4 mana? They're on Anivia, and if I lose to Avalanche here,
sometimes
I
you
put
need
myself
to, and sometimes you shouldn't.
Exactly.
It's hard to figure out why.
I think an example that works for me. Think about that you're in a game. The game's been going on. You're trading resources. Both people are low on life total. You're deciding whether or not to make an attack. If you take this particular line, you win the game 80% of the time, and you lose the game on the spot 20% of the time because they have the removal and they kill you on the backswing or whatever, right? But if you don't attack, you are 100% safe not to lose the game. So you pass, right? You're never going to die on the next turn if you don't attack.
Yeah, but you fail
also,
to analyze
you're not going to win.
Yeah, that you then become 40% to win the game as a whole or whatever.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Obviously you should take the 80 now.
Yeah.
And
that's a very extreme example, but that kind of thing, taking the risk, even though it means that 45% of the time you lose, 5% of the time you win, those are odds that you need to take.
Yeah, I think this
it sucks sometimes.
Comes
45%
right back
of the time.
I think this comes right back into you need to put yourself in a position to get lucky, right? Those are the situations where if you do the prep and you put yourself in that situation, you should be happy that you were in the situation where you could have gotten lucky and won, right? If you're 4-0 and you take a 60%er and you lose, that really sucks. You lost. You on average, you would have won that game, but at least you put yourself in the position to get lucky and maybe win or whatever.
And that's not even get lucky. That's just good odds.
Yeah.
Just gotta take it.
Exactly.
That's a huge thing in we should not talk about this right now, but in poker, it's just you're gonna win, you gotta go all in, you're ahead. But
good luck.
Sometimes
you lose.
Yeah. 60-40% of 60-40 matchups are very good matchups. You still lose them 40% of the time. Turns out 40% of the time is a lot.
Feels like a coin flip. Yeah. in
really
reality,
does.
When you're playing a 60-40 matchup, it rarely feels like, oh man, this is so one-sided and ridiculous. And some games feel like that, obviously, but a lot of the time, you look back and you're like, we just coin flipped all the games.
Yep, totally. All right. Anything else you want to talk about?
Any
nerves?
last touches we want to go over for tournament anxiety and that type of thing before we jump into the actual tournament?
There is one concept I want to touch on before we move on, and
absolutely.
that is imposter syndrome.
Ooh,
Oh my God.
Fancy.
I've been feeling this all week.
this
Yes.
is a good one.
I'm sorry, you mentioned that,
really
and it
good
just
one.
like a switch went off
Yeah.
in my brain.
Oh yeah.
I was having a conversation on Reddit, and we.
All right, let's start with Q. Will you explain what imposter syndrome is
Yeah.
for those
So-
for those who might not be familiar?
So exactly. So imposter syndrome is, I'm sure everyone has experienced this at some point in their lives in something, whether it is, Runeterra. I see this a lot.
School, work.
Yeah, exactly. Or like you have a goal and you're trying to get there. I see it a lot when people are trying to like get in shape.
That's a huge one.
Imposter syndrome is when you want to be proud of where you're working towards a goal, and you see other people working towards a similar goal. You look around at all of these people and you think, why am I among these people?
They
Like,
have
I
it
don't-
together. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, I don't deserve to be amongst people like this. They're more talented. They're better than me. Like, I am not as good, and I don't deserve to be here because I'm not as good. Let's just use the most relevant example we have right now. This seasonal tournament. What you need to do to qualify, you either need to get in the last chance gauntlet, or you need to be top 700 in your server.
Both of those things are hard. Be proud of them.
Exactly. Something that you should never, do not look at where you are on the ladder. I don't care if you're 650, 350, wherever you are. I don't want you to go scrolling to the top, seeing the person who has 1K ladder points because he's a crazy
He's a
person.
sicko. He's an absolute madman.
Yeah. And I don't want you to say, I don't deserve to be here because
I can't beat them if I played against them. Oh, I hope I don't play against them.
Right.
That's
Don't,
huge.
All of those things. Don't say those things. Like, allow yourself to be proud of where you have gotten to because you've worked for it. I see people saying like, I just got to plat. I just got to diamond. I just got to silver, whatever.
I'm never not actually stoked for those people. Like anytime somebody's like, I hit my goal, it's always like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Sick.
Go
Great.
off.
That's
Yeah,
sick.
that's awesome. Like,
yeah, it's
be-
never not sick.
Be
It's
proud
always
of yourself.
Cool.
I don't want anyone to ever like, if you achieved your goal, and even if that goal is silver, and you look up and you see like, whoa, my buddy's plat, my buddy's diamond. I have 3 friends in masters, and I never ever want you to think to yourself, well, I shouldn't be proud that I got silver. Don't ever say that.
I want to say this about this game. Mathematically, less than 50% of people get out of most tiers. Like, just full stop. Like, if you're in plat, not everyone in plat at that time is going to get out of it. If you get out of it, it's impressive.
Every time you win, somebody loses.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
to climb in a tier, you have to be winning more than you're losing. That means that there have to be some amount of people who are losing more than they're winning. Usually it's either a lot of people that are winning slightly or losing slightly more than they're winning, or a lot of people who are losing way less than they're winning, or
way more than they're winning.
losing way more than they're winning.
Or the classic of people hit, diamond 4-0 LP and then go hog wild.
Yeah,
or whatever with Bruce. There's a lot of that going on.
I was having a conversation with someone, and I was like, oh yeah, like keep playing in diamond and you're gonna climb. And they were like, that's only true if you're better than the people in diamond. And I don't know why, but I was like, oh, like you're right. Like, no, the answer is not. Like, you have to not only keep playing, but keep improving. So the fact that you are where you are is an accomplishment.
Absolutely.
Good job. If what you're right now, you've gotten stuck in platinum, yeah, you're around the level of the other platinum players. That's not a bad place to be. Keep learning, and I promise
Still
you,
only
you'll get
upper
out.
50% of players, without a doubt.
Oh, that's way higher than upper
way higher.
50%. People
I
don't
know
realize
where the
how
actual
high the
bell curve
percentile is.
Do you know where it is off the top of your head?
So
I think that
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know that we've actually
I know it
gotten
for, like,
those stats
League,
from anyone.
but I don't know it from Legends.
Yeah,
of
they've-
Runeterra.
And I know it for StarCraft.
Riot has released it for like League, and there's a lot of. I just don't know if we've ever
So-
had that data in Legends of Runeterra.
We probably do. I know that. So in general, when I look at games, diamond, mid-high diamond is generally about the top 5% of players.
Wait, that? Yes,
Yes.
that's impressive. Yeah,
Right. And think about
you
that.
go, people.
You like just for a second, let's say you're bottom of diamond. You just hit diamond 4. That probably means mathematically
10% at least. It's gotta
exactly.
be.
You are in the top 10 percentile of every single Legends of Runeterra player on your server.
Yeah,
Great.
Be proud of yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was a huge thing for Masters. I was like, I don't deserve to be here. We were talking about creating content, and we were talking about like paying people for coaching. I was like, I'm not as good as the people who are streaming. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm like 70 on the ladder right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
That's pretty
absolutely.
high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A huge thing, like, so we get people who like talk to us and are like, "Oh man, you're so good at this game," and my immediate thought is,
Yeah.
"I'm trash. Why are you?" Like,
I struggled with it a lot when I was playing Hearthstone. Even when I was the time I hit rank 1 on the ladder in Hearthstone, I like had a tournament that weekend, and I went in and I'm like, I'm such a huge dog this tournament. Like, I have no idea how to play the Druid Priest matchup. Like, I don't know. The Strife Crows won his like 4th tournament in a row because the guy just can't lose. And like, I was just like, I don't know. I don't have a chance. And I was rank 1, right? Like, I was literally rank 1 in NA, and I had that opinion. So it's like, it doesn't go away, but you should always fight it. Like, it is always ridiculous. And I understand that being rank 1 and having that opinion is maybe the most extreme example of it being ridiculous, but like, it's ridiculous no matter what.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, everyone has these thoughts. It doesn't matter who you are, because you personally, like, part of the problem with imposter syndrome and why I think, I could be totally off base here, but this is part of the reason why I think we feel this way, is because we have such a tendency in general to put people we respect on a huge pedestal. And we see these people accomplishing things we want to accomplish. Just people. Random people. Like, and we see them accomplishing these things that we would like to accomplish, and we immediately think, look at them being better than me. Like, look at them up there. I could never achieve such mastery of a game.
And they are up there thinking, look at those other guys. Wow, I'm trash. I do not deserve to be here. Like, the biggest thing is that you're not in their head. Like, you know all of the misplays you made.
Yeah.
And you don't see them make misplays. So you're like, they're obviously better than me. And they're over there beating themselves up against that time that they like clicked through their combat phase. And
sometimes people are reading an article or whatever written by some pro, and they're like, man, this guy's so good. And then I just imagine like the camera flashes to whoever, because I do this a lot, where it's 2 a.m. You tried to go to sleep, couldn't sleep, too stressed about tomorrow. Go open the box of Cheez-Its from the room. It's 2:30. Brew a cup of coffee. Like, I'm just gonna play ranked until 6 a.m. I can't sleep tonight. Whatever. I've done that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
absolutely.
Could somebody read my article and think that I'm the Messiah? I'm sitting here at like 2 a.m. like with a box of Cheez-Its that's half gone at this point, and I opened an hour ago, and I'm like, queuing up again. Here we go, Lisa and Zoe, yay! It's like, no, this is ridiculous. But like, yeah, people really do.
I
think
get up
that,
for work at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you know what? I went to bed at past midnight the other night because I'm an idiot. like 3 days ago, I like looked down at a separate thing, but like basically, for some reason we had like a 12-pound box of donuts on our coffee table. We're not going to get into that story, but
ask about it in the Discord if you want the
yeah, exactly. We can tell you all about
some donuts.
Short answer: a friend of ours came into for the cost of low price of $20.
Describe it.
Yeah, you can't say you aren't going to describe it.
For $20, you got 2 grams of donuts.
That's a lot of donuts.
That's the end. And I just ate too many donuts. And
who hasn't?
Yeah, right. Anyway,
I've eaten too many donuts in my life,
because
that's for
we
sure.
partook in that box of donuts.
And I happen to be currently, I think, around 350th in NA.
Yeah.
And I'm just a schmuck who stays up too late and plays too much. And he's like,
but you're not a schmuck. You should be proud of it.
Exactly.
All right.
And these are all reasons why people think that they don't deserve to be where they are. Like they just look at
you met the barrier to qualify for this tournament.
Yeah,
you did it.
And if you didn't,
play in the tournament,
great.
And if you didn't, that's fine too.
There's next season, and there's the gauntlet.
You didn't. It's really hard. Yeah,
it's really, really hard.
Yeah,
there's only 1,000 people that
I already know that there's going to be so many people who win this gauntlet and be like, "Oh God, I didn't deserve to win Game 7 because my opponent like had a terrible draw. Like I'm such a fraud. I shouldn't be in this tournament." Like, no, stop it.
You put yourself in position to get lucky.
Highly recommend everyone play that is not qualified for Masters play the Last Chance Gauntlet, and I'm going to be writing an article about the Last Chance Gauntlet that will be in the link of this video, or in the description of this video, wherever you're listening to it on. So if you want to check that out,
absolutely,
please do.
Also, if you are qualified, you should still play the Last Chance Gauntlet. It is the format that you're about to be playing. It is the best possible way
Wait.
to
I
practice
thought-
for this tournament.
I thought the last chance gauntlet was specifically a best of one.
It is best of one. Yeah, it's not the exact same.
yeah.
format.
Oh, it's still best of one.
It's still
but you
best of
still
one.
get to
It's still
pick a
practice.
lineup. You still get to see what they're playing. Like you get to see what people are playing. You get to see if your lineup works.
Yeah, practice in a practical environment is hard to come by when you're already qualified on ladder and you really don't want to play ranked and lose.
totally.
That's
Yep,
hard to come
absolutely.
by.
Cool.
So yeah, I think now we should probably start talking about
What
this
you've all been
actual
waiting for.
tournament.
Donut
itself.
intervention aside.
Yeah, how has our testing gone, and where do we want to go? And I want to start with I think in the most fitting place that it possibly could. I think the most important part
Twisted Fate.
the
Twisted
game
Fate.
right now is
Twisted
none other
Fate.
than Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate, I think, is the card
More
that
so
you
than
have to-
Aphelios.
More so than Aphelios,
oh, yeah.
yes. Is the card that you have to decide what you're doing with in this seasonal tournament. I think that if you are not playing a Twisted Fate deck, you made a mistake, probably.
Or
Or you're a genius.
Or you
you
did
have
it.
to have a good reason. Yeah. If you're not playing a Twisted Fate, I expect a good reason. Like if I look at someone's lineup and I'm like, why isn't there a TF deck? And the answer is, I like these 3 decks. I'm going to say that you probably messed something up. I think personally, I think that you need
because
a
you don't
reason.
like TF, which makes you a crazy person.
Yeah, you
Or
need a
because
reason
you're
to not play a TF deck.
philosophically oh, look at all these net deckers. Like, no, don't.
Yeah, I don't want to hear any of that.
You can do that if you want. That's winning the hard way.
I'm a
and if you
filthy
do that,
net decker.
power to you. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a net deck.
We're here to win the efficient way, not the hard way.
Oh, I'm a filthy net decker myself.
We're all filthy net deckers. Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. So I think that Twisted Fate is the most important card in the meta, and I think we should look at the Twisted Fate decks. So the ones that really stand out are Twisted Fate Aphelios and Twisted Fate Fizz, the Wiggly Purplefish deck.
Yeah. And then
there's like a distant
gap.
third, and that's Go Hard.
Twisted Fate Elise /
Twisted Fate
Gangplank.
Elise Gangplank, similar to the old Go Hard.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah. So, in general, I think that I want to start with Twisted Fate Fizz. I think that it is a hard deck to attack, and it notably does not take Aphelios as a champion, which is another really good champion that you might want to put in another spot.
Is not a card you want to put in any of your decks. Is upside.
Yeah. The actual format in itself because you can't use duplicate champions, and you can't have exact duplicate regions. So
yeah, you can run.
Wait, you can't have exact duplicate regions?
I don't think so. I don't think you're allowed
I'm
to
going to
play.
think for a little bit, but we should keep talking.
Yeah. You can go ahead and Google
I'll
it right
Google
now.
it.
Okay, okay, Google it. I thought that was the rule. Regardless, you can't have duplicate champions. I'm certain of that.
Yes,
that's the
that
part
is definitely
that's the
true.
part that matters. So
Yeah.
the other part, whatever, it doesn't even really matter. The duplicate champions thing is the pinch here, because you only get to play one Twisted Fate deck. You only get to play one Aphelios deck. So
Luckily, so does your opponent.
yeah, so does your opponent. So I think that the answer to this seasonal tournament is, what are you doing about Twisted Fate yourself, and what are you doing about your opponent's Twisted Fate? Because I expect almost everyone to have a Twisted Fate deck. I think that I just don't think that it's really possible, and because trust me, I've tried to come up with a lineup that does not include Twisted Fate that sufficiently attacks all of the various forms of Twisted Fate. Because that was the first place I started was, in these formats, the like best of 3, you ban a deck. If you show up with, for example, 3 decks that are all going to slaughter any TF variant, whatever they may be, it doesn't really matter. 3 decks that are great against every Twisted Fate deck, and then your opponent brings a Twisted Fate deck, you're a big favorite to win the match, because you can ban whichever one of their other 2 decks is theoretically worse for you. And then your opponent is going to have to because your opponent has to get a win with each deck that you didn't ban, right? So they have to get a win with their Twisted Fate deck into your all good Twisted Fate deck matchups, right? And so that is usually the most effective angle to attack in these formats, is you try and pick a deck that you most expect your opponents to have, and you try and attack it. And then you build your decks in such a way that you're effectively attacking it, and you build your decks and your lineup in such a way that you are planning on banning something. You almost always want to have a plan for what you're going to be banning, and you almost always want to have a plan for what you're attacking. But it's hard to attack Twisted Fate. Really hard. He's so good. He's just solid. I can't think of any 3 decks that I could submit where I just feel blanket ahead against Twisted Fate general. I don't think it exists.
Yeah.
Or at least if it does, I haven't.
There are enough versions. Also, you are correct. You can't have duplicate regions. No, Feel the Rush and Anivia for you, which makes sense. You could put in, like I said, Feel the Rush, Anivia, and like Thresh Ash, which is a deck I did play against in a tournament.
That's just about as
and
up there
lose
with
to.
the Resh Yasuo.
I did lose to it. It was good.
Unfamiliarity, man.
Yeah. So that leads me to the conclusion of, well, I guess I'm going to struggle to attack TF in general. So perhaps we can attack a specific TF variant. And I think my prediction is that Twisted Fate Fizz will be the most popular deck at this tournament. The Wiggly Burblefish variant, few cards different from whatever. I think the lists have gotten really good, really refined.
They're honing in on the copies of stress testing.
They cut out all the bad cards like Coral Creatures that I was really ragging on for a while, and like Parlay. Both of those are gone now. Thank you. I officially have no problems with bad cards in the deck.
Also, Mind Meld is out of there. Thank God.
Yeah, there's a lot. Like people took the bad cards out and put in good cards. Thank you. That's all I ever wanted. Was to take the bad cards out of our deck. And I think it's great, and I plan to play it. I think it is the best Twisted Fate deck, or I think it is the best Twisted Fate deck.
Yeah, I think your choice is between this and TF Aphelios. I do think TF Aphelios beats TF Fizz in the heads up.
I agree.
But I think that TF Aphelios is infinitely more attackable. It is easy enough to go over the top of that deck because it less consistently puts a bunch of Burblefish in play and flips Twisted Fate because you don't have Rummage or
pick a card.
Pick a card testing.
You do have pick cards, but you don't have Rummage stress testing
and
Zonite Urchins
improvement, right? Iterative improvement to put a bunch of Burblefish in play, and you also lose out on PNZ's burn package, so you're harder for you to close out the game. So you put a lot less pressure on your opponent, which gives them time to do things like cast the card Feel the Rush. TF
or Anivia or
Aphelios. First off, our hot take for a little bit was that this deck was really just not that good. And I think that was because lists were pretty unrefined. I think we're at a point now where it's pretty good and I'm pretty happy with it. I still just don't particularly like the deck.
To be honest,
I know that the deck's probably good, but just played some games with it. They were in normals and they didn't feel great. Like, that is not a great endorsement.
Yeah, and I think that so like I said, I talked a lot about TF Fizz being not particularly attackable because it's hard to attack that deck. I think there's a couple options that you can have, but none of them are really that great, I don't think. I think the best one is like probably some Fiora variant or maybe a Nivea, something like that. Something with a lot of Withering Whales.
I tested
Go Hard is quite good.
I tested the TF Aphelios deck into a guy's lineup that was tech to beat it, and I lost to like it was like a Nivea. Oh God, it was some Ionian champion.
There's just a pile of
not Lulu.
I don't think Lulu.
Okay.
Anyway,
Karma.
Yeah, and I basically played against like a Feel the Rush deck, a War Mother's Call deck, and like a random Pirate aggro. I don't know why that thing was in that lineup, but the lineup was good. It just beat me all 3 games, and none of them felt close. It just like I couldn't do anything when they were casting Feel the Rushes and Anivias. It's just hard for you to pressure them because they can block and have removal spells, and the deck is really bad at removing champions. Without Piltover and Zon for Get Excited and Mystic Shot, you just aren't very good at killing the card Twisted Fate. You aren't very good at killing the card Aphelios. It's really easy to just get in this like mid-rangey scrum, and it's a coin flip who comes out on top.
And all this compiles with the fact that the deck has a target on its back. The fact that you played against someone whose plan was I'm gonna beat TF Aphelios, automatically means that like, and granted, I expect to play against people whose lineups attempt to beat TF Fizz, the Burblefish deck, and bring it on. I'm willing to say bring it on to those people because I don't think you can consistently do it, at least not without a lot of testing that I didn't do. So if they manage to do it, then good for them.
A lot of drawbacks in other places.
Yes,
that's the big thing. Like we absolutely can build a lineup that crushes that deck, but like what do you sacrificing?
Isn't the lineup that we are building built to beat TF Fizz?
It is.
Okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, you think other people haven't found the particular attack that we have. This makes sense.
No, I mostly think that there aren't 3 decks that just slam this deck. I think that the best you're going to get is
2 decks.
2 decks that are pretty good and the mirror.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's my analysis of it.
Well, if our lineup just played TF Aphelios, which we just think said we think is favored against TF Fizz.
We have Aphelios in a different spot though.
Oh, that's right. I'm spacing.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I think. So yeah. So this segues wonderfully I think, into
what
I think
we're playing.
Yeah, my actual plan, which we've put quite a bit of testing into, and we really hammered out before we started recording. I think that the best thing that you can be playing is the Twisted Fate Fizz Burblefish deck, a Demacia Scouts variant that's playing Stony Suppressor.
Ooh.
That we've
That's the important part.
Yeah, that deck. The deck is quite a bit different from the Scouts decks you might have been used to with the Grand Plaza and Island Navigator. And I think we're gonna talk about that one in a second. And then this new tech for the day, and this one
Came out this morning.
literally
Today.
this morning. So this one I don't feel nearly as qualified to talk as in depth about, but and this is one of those things where we talked earlier about a card game's one of the best skills a card game player can have is being able to make conclusions with far too little information.
Yeah.
I am doing that here. Yeah. So if this one's bad, I'm sorry. I'll take the full blame for it. I think Aphelios Fiora is insane. I think it is. I've only played 8 total games with the deck. But it just felt like the best Aphelios deck. It has a plan to win the game, and it is a good one. And that is something that I think the Aphelios decks in general have been lacking.
Yeah, they're also not that great. They're not as good at flipping Twisted Fate. So
Yeah, their plan to win the game is much weaker.
Yeah, it's
It
not
just
that
doesn't-
good.
it's a lot of value.
It's so much value.
And that is something that you can
Yeah,
you can
they
front the value with.
They
it.
like
cast
pull
Steal
out
the Rush, yeah.
Boxtopus on turn 3 with your Aphelios, and you're like, I can't win, and then they don't do a whole lot else.
Yeah, and that is a really good plan against aggro, and not that good of a plan against anybody else who's trying to play
Especially because your primary champ removal is just like, I
Hush
hope
it.
my Boxtopus gets big enough.
Hush or whatever.
yeah, Hush, and it's the
champs-
Boxtopus, but yeah, a Hush too.
Champions are really the problem that deck has, and I think that the Aphelios Fiora deck has a lot of tools and reasons why that one's better. So I think we'll get to that one last. I do want to talk about the Stony Suppressor Scouts deck. This deck we saw posted in our Discord. Carinal posted it in the Discord. I should have asked them whether they made the deck or whether they got it from somewhere, but for now, we'll give credit to them. And it is a much more aggressive, very Demacia-centered build of Scouts. It's so Demacia-centered that it's playing Vanguard Bannerman as like
Return
the
of the
4 drops.
Bannerman.
There are only 3 Bilgewater cards, and it is 3 copies of Misfortune, I believe.
I think that is correct.
Yep.
So, and Stony Suppressor. Stony Suppressor is the big card that I want to talk about right now. Stony Suppressor is insanely good right now. So good, in fact, that our initial thought, Hugh and Jesse's initial thought, and I thought it was a great plan at first too, and honestly, I was prepared to say that was the best lineup before this Aphelios Fiora deck came out today, was to play the Stony Suppressor Scouts deck and then play more Stony Suppressors in a Leona Aurelion Soul deck, just so that we could have 2 Stony Suppressor decks.
And they couldn't ban. They couldn't suppress our suppress.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. This card is obscenely good against Wiggly Burblefish TF Fizz decks. I think that this is the best deck against Wiggly Burblefish TF Fizz variants. Or just Wiggly Burblefish in general.
Yeah.
It has a really fast clock, so it puts the Stony Suppressor into play and kills you. It just kills you. There's no, you ended up spending an extra mana on it, or you took your turn 4 off, but it's fine because I played a Grand Pause or whatever. No. If you take turn 4 off to kill Stony Suppressor, I'm going to put 6 power into play and then attack you.
Yeah, and that is what they have to do. They cast the 5 mana gotcha at your Stony Suppressor, and then
and then I play a 2-drop 1-drop and then Vanguard Bannerman, and you're so far behind.
And even
on
if
board.
it's 3 mana, they spent probably 3 just regular mana that they
like a whole turn at
It's
least.
a whole turn.
Yeah.
Because you drop it on turn 2, and then on turn 3, that's
If you drop it on
everything.
turn 2, they need to have drawn the gotcha that turn. They can't play a Get Excited that turn. They also need to have not played a 1-drop. Yeah, it just
doesn't really happen, right? Yeah, it never dies on turn 2, and it sometimes dies on turn 3 for 5 mana, and then you get to deploy
4 mana and a card with a real card with Get Excited.
and you get to deploy a huge amount of power on the turns that they're taking off. It's like playing Scouts, but guaranteeing that your opponent is going to take turn 3 or 4 off. It's crazy because they can't execute their plan. And it does this against Wiggly Burblefish decks, against Lee Sin Zoe. It does the exact same thing. quite good against the ramp decks that are just going to put them basically a turn behind where you need the extra time.
Yeah.
It's great against it's basically just blanket great against Twisted Fate.
Yeah, they have to like use their spell mana to like play their spells instead of like stocking them up to play like runations and stuff.
Yep.
Against the big decks. It also is good against Aphelios because if you hate it when your opponent plays
3 guns in a turn.
no the 2/1 that creates the
2/1?
Dusk Petal.
Oh,
it's really
yes.
good.
into Twisted Fate. Because they played
Into
Dusk Petal.
Aphelios, yeah.
They played Dusk Petal, Aphelios, Gun.
Gun for Boxtopus.
Yeah, Gun for Boxtopus. Now they play Petal and then Aphelios, and then they have 1 mana, and their guns cost 3 mana.
Yeah, not even close.
Yeah.
And notably, Stony Suppressor does kind of get sniped by Calibrum. So
Then
they
they still
spend 6 mana, and
yeah,
then
it's not a horrible.
it makes it harder to turn on
tempo-wise.
Nightfall. So like they can't turn on Nightfall for the Aphelios because they needed to play a spell before. So and the gun costs more. So it definitely still puts them very far behind, even if
Absolutely,
they cleanly answer it.
it's really good on exactly turn 2 against Aphelios, but falls off later. Whereas I think this actually like Stony Suppressor doesn't fall off as much later in the other
Against, like,
matchups.
TFS.
But it is good there too. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, and I can't stress this enough. It's the interaction piece, and your interaction piece is Stony Suppressor with a really fast clock. The fast clock, I think, is the important part, which is why I wasn't so sold on the Leona Aesol deck, because I think the piece of the card that was missing was having a clock to back up the disruption so that you could actually get through and kill them before Lee Sin killed you or whatever, which I don't think is a luxury that like Leona Aurelian Soul deck would have, for example. So I'm really high on this deck. I played it almost exclusively. I know last week on the podcast I mentioned that I was like 1 win away from my LP threshold, so I would inevitably lose all the way to 0. So about 15 games and 150 LP later, I was at 0, and I played this Stony Scouts deck, and there will be deck code for all of the decks that we're talking about in the description of whatever platform you're listening to this on, so feel free to check them out. The Stony Scouts deck, I played a variant of that deck from 0 LP up to 150, which is where I'm at right now, and I'm currently at 149, hoping that I'm not going to have to play another game, and I'm really sweating it, but I might have to play one more. So, but I think I'll be okay. So,
Here's to hope.
Yeah, and you know, it got you there. I was there with you, and we just like slammed this Burblefish deck.
yeah, I did it in like a morning.
Yeah.
'Cause
Also,
the
if
games
you
were
like
so
need
fast.
to climb, if you're listening to this on Thursday morning, you're like, I have to win like 5 games tonight.
Oh, this is the one. This is the deck. Yeah, this is the deck.
Yep. It's fast and it's good.
It's really fast. It slams Burblefish decks, and admittedly, there's been a big uptick in Aphelios Fiora this last like couple hours on the ranked server.
Oh, how
and
the meta shifts.
It's your Scout stick is not good against that, so be careful there. But I'm very high on this deck, especially in a tournament format where I get to slot it into my lineup in order to pick on both Lisa and Zoe and Burblefish really hard.
Yeah, and then they have to ban it, and then you get to play TF Fizz, which we also want to be playing into those decks.
Yes,
That's the really big thing, is that we're putting this deck and Fiora Aphelios in this lineup, which are things that people might not be familiar with, might not have prepared for, and then they have to ban them, and then we get to play the best deck, TF Fizz.
absolutely. Yeah, and that really is the thing. So, and then there's Aphelios Fiora, which I want to move on to next. And like I said, I have less solid opinions on this deck. I've probably played 40 games with the Scouts deck, and I've played 8 with this deck. So I have less confident opinions here, but I think that the deck is very, very good. I think it is the best Aphelios deck from the games I've played. It's been the most
Which is
impressed
quite
I've been
acclaimed,
with
because
Aphelios.
the other ones have felt pretty decent.
Yeah, the TF Aphelios decks has felt good once it got refined, but this one feels abundantly more powerful to me. It absolutely slams Fiora Shen.
Yeah, this is the deck, for those who don't religiously use Reddit like I do, popularized by the YouTuber. Popularized, I say, like 10 hours after this post.
Yeah.
Sorry, the post is 13 hours old. Raftera on YouTube makes cool content. You can check him out. And he made a Reddit post that we checked out, immediately started getting games in. That's another huge part of testing that I forgot to mention. Like keeping active on social media, and like you don't have to be a slave to it, but like looking through what people are posting and talking about these decks. Get it? Someone writes an article about a new deck, then everyone starts trying to improve it because they say that they have a really good win rate with it, and that is a great time to either try to abuse it on ladder or play it yourself on ladder.
Absolutely. And I think it's really, really good. And I think it actually fits in our lineup really well. It's supposed to have, and this is, once again, me using data because I didn't have enough time to test all of these matchups. But from what I've heard, it has a very favorable TF Burblefish matchup, which is something I was certainly looking for. And it has a favorable Lee Sin Zoe matchup, a favorable Fiora Shen matchup, and like a lot of 50-50s. The matchup chart seemed great, and admittedly, we should, that was from the creator of the deck, so you should always take those with,
Grain of salt.
with a
They
grain
would
of
not be
salt.
telling you about it if they hadn't had a good win rate with it.
Correct. So you should take all of that with a grain of salt, and I do intend to
Test it a lot
test
more.
this deck a lot in the next 48 hours before
Yeah.
however long until the tournament starts. So this is the one that I'm keeping my eye on for now, but this is the deck that I suspect is going to be the best Aphelios deck come this weekend. It has Fiora in it, which innately gives you usually a very good aggressive plan against aggressive decks. So if you ever end up against the triple aggro deck game plan or whatever, which is pretty common, then we've got this Fiora deck, which is going to be pretty good. Big Wiggly Burblefish, which is usually fine against aggro, splits games, and the Scouts deck, which is usually fine and splits games against aggro. So I don't think we're going to be at a bad spot against the aggro decks. I don't think we're going to be at a bad spot against the triple control decks. We have Burblefish, which usually splits games against a lot of control decks, except for specific ones. We have Stony Suppressor Scouts, which I think is favored against most control decks, just because
Scouts
of the
was
speed
always
plus
good
Stony
against control
Suppressor.
decks, and now it's even better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Aphelios Fiora deck probably is going to be able to have people go over the top of it. I don't suspect that plan is very good against like Feel the Rush or whatever.
But then again, Fiora has historically been good at Feel the Rush. A lot of that is because of Notify and Deny.
Yeah.
But you do get to like eat some of their small units and threaten that to win the game.
Yeah, I don't think we don't have a plan there either.
Yeah, you
which is
also
great.
have Bastion, which, while doesn't stop the rotation from killing the rest of your board, does save Fiora and can get you over the finish line.
Absolutely. And a real strong point in this deck that I looked at the list and was like, really? Is Aphelios Crescendum for Egghead Researcher.
Oh, yeah.
It's sick. It's so good. It handily annihilates Fiora Shen. If you're playing the Fiora Shen side of that matchup, you need to Nopify Crescendum for Egghead Researcher because you can't beat the random dragons. I'm serious. Like that was basically the result of my testing when that matchup this morning was like Egghead Researcher is the nuts. Like just they I don't know, Fiora Shen tries to play Screeching Dragons and you just play the Infinite Mind Splitter or whatever big dumb dragon you got. Any like 6 or 7 mana dragon usually wins the game against
Even
that
Fused
deck.
Firebrand is like pretty hard for them
Great.
to actually.
Yeah, they have a
favorably
really
interact
hard
with.
time dealing with Spell Shield.
And
usually.
you're a Veiled Temple deck. That's what it's called, right? The Veiled Temple.
Veil Temple.
Yeah. And you use the mana so well, and the +1/+1 counters are going on off in Fiora.
Yeah, and that's the next point I wanted to make is this is a really, really good Veiled Temple deck. I think the Veiled Temple is like one of the best cards in this deck. And because you can take a turn off to play the Veiled Temple, and it doesn't feel that bad, especially in the mid-range battles, where you just don't need to really spend that much mana on their turn when you're playing a Fiora deck, right? Like when they have the attack token. So you can just play the Veiled Temple. And then when you are trying to interact and have big turns, it gives you 2 extra mana on those turns where you're trying to interact and pumps your guys. So it makes it so much harder for your opponent to end up winning those crucial combats. And I mean, imagine playing a Fiora deck where your Fiora like always wins every critical combat. It's kind of what it feels like when you have the Veiled Temple and play with that deck. So at least it has to me so far. So I'm really optimistic on this deck. I'm really high on it. I really can't wait to play more with it. And I think that it rounds out our lineup really well because, I talked about the TF deck in general being the key to the meta. And I think that we're going to show up with a great plan to deal with TF. We're either going to see TF Fizz, in which case I think our lineup is generally favored against the deck. We have a Mirror and what I would consider to be 2 good matchups. And then against TF Aphelios, I think we're actually not very favored at all, but I think our lineup in general is kind of soft to the card Aphelios. So like planning to ban an Aphelios deck, I think is a different line than a lot of people are going to take. And even though we talked about Aphelios not necessarily being the key, I think we got here through the TF
It's
lens.
a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
It's a TF deck and an Aphelios deck that you get to ban.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. And so
I'm saying if this lineup's plan is to ban TF Aphelios when it runs into it, you're getting a lot of value out of your ban.
super. Yeah, and there's going to be various decks that you don't want to see. And I haven't finished fully writing out the matchup charts of what I think the highest priority bans are in order, which I do plan to do before before the actual tournament starts. But in my head, like when I was just thinking, wrote it out, thought about decks, I thought to myself, like, yeah, there's like almost always going to be like a thing that's a pretty obvious ban, and I'm probably going to have 1 to 2 good matchups almost every time. And then the best part about this lineup is that we're just bringing 3 really good decks. Like,
Scouts just wins a lot of games. These decks it has no business winning because it just curves out in bad matchups.
Yeah, they're just proven to be good. They're efficient. They're effective. We're playing good cards.
Yeah,
we're not getting too crazy, but we are attacking the meta from, I think, a great way. We have a plan. I'm really high on this lineup right now.
Yeah, totally. Other things that I think you can do, I think level 1 is kind of just starting with either TF Fizz or TF Aphelios, then asking your question, if you're playing TF Fizz, what your Aphelios deck should be. In both of those lineups, I think Lee Zoe fits in really well.
Absolutely.
So, playing a good mid-range lineup with one of those TF decks, Lee Zoe, and then figuring out if you're playing TF Fizz and Lee Zoe, what your best Aphelios deck is. It might be Aphelios Victor. That was kind of fallen out of favor. But if we're talking about this meta's trouble dealing with big champions and a kind of Vengeance's stock being at an all-time low, it's a pretty good time to be putting Victor in your deck. Not super solid in that recommendation, but if you came with that, I totally wouldn't blame you. And then if you have a TF Fizz deck, TF Aphelios, Lee Zoe, then trying to figure out what your last deck is fitting in there. Weird. I've thinking about Anivia Control is a pretty decent deck.
It's an enticing deck to think about. I've thought a lot about potentially putting Anivia into my lineups, and I really like the deck, and it really attacks the meta from a very interesting angle, but it just feels like it's going to get banned a lot unless it feels like it's going to get banned a lot against the matchups that are going to be bad against it. And
the times I think that deck, when it's not getting banned,
it just isn't that good. Yeah, it's not that good if it doesn't get banned.
If your opponent is confident they can beat your Anivia, then
they
you're in a bad spot.
Yeah, because they're usually right. I don't want to have to play Anivia against an unknown field if they choose not to ban it. That's kind of my logic on that deck as well. And then you have to be really confident in meta calls like that, where it's like not that good of a deck against the field. Like you really have to hope you run into the right stuff.
And then Ezreal Teemo is another one that you could totally slot in.
That's one I really want to talk about. I think that deck is really good. Actually, really
it's
good.
Not great against aggro, but like we said, we don't expect a ton of triple aggro lineups. Although TF Fizz slots into some aggro lineups kind of nicely.
Absolutely.
The other thing I was realizing is Tom Rocca could be decent in this field. Tom Kent's just pretty good right now. But you can't play him with TF Aphelios because it's the same region combination.
Correct.
So that is something that you need to look out for.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, very. So you have to be playing TF Fizz, Tom Rocca, and then probably Lee Zoe, but which does sound like a totally reasonable lineup. I think there's also
I think there's a lot of good options, and it's impossible to go through all of them.
You're definitely going to run into a lineup that you hadn't thought about. They're going to have both Tom Rocca and Anivia Control and Deep, and you're going to go like, wait a second,
and then you queued against Hugh.
You might be playing against Hugh.
What do you think, Hugh? I know you've been doing a lot of testing. Where's your testing brought you? Do you? I know we have a similar opinion on things because we've been testing
we have a similar
together,
opinion
obviously.
on things.
Curious if you have any points you want to bring up in specific.
I really wanted to slot Tom Rocca into my lineup this time around because I just like whether this is probably a bad thing, but a good part of my like how I build a lineup is actually a decent amount of just a gut check. Like it's just a feel thing for me, like a decent amount. And that's kind of how I use data as well. I sort of use it to like check myself if I like feel really up on a deck for like pure anecdotal evidence. I'm like, okay, let's just rein myself in a little bit. Like, let's look at the data, see what's going on, see what the numbers say, because I'm one person who's played like 15 games. Like there's a bigger picture here.
You don't trust yourself, Hugh? Is that it?
I need to get an objective opinion.
It's because you knew as soon as you mentioned putting Tom Rocca into your lineup that I would ask you if you really wanted to do that, and you had to come prepared with an argument.
Exactly. And I found that Tom Rocca really, really does not like playing against Fizz TF.
Interesting. Yeah.
Maybe I'm a crazy person. Maybe I'm bad with the deck. Maybe they drew well. Maybe
it didn't feel good.
Yeah. It just didn't feel good.
Yeah. Then probably I wouldn't recommend it if you're not a fan of Tom Kenshin did various
exactly, and that
decks.
was step one, right? Like that was one of, if arguably the best deck.
Yeah,
right
I don't really want to play any deck that I think is going to have a blanket bad TF matchup, unless it is exactly TF Aphelios, because then I feel like you're getting a super valuable ban.
Yeah, and then Fiora Shen, also totally reasonable.
Fiora Shen's really good right now too.
Yeah.
And a big reason why I like the Aphelios Fiora deck is because I think it slams Fiora Shen. Yeah. So I've been really happy with that.
I also was looking at a matchup table, and Overwhelm aggro just is pretty well positioned. Like if you're playing a lineup and you had TF Fizz, Overwhelm aggro, and the Champless or just Teemo burn deck, I would be very scared. I would look at that lineup and kind of not know what to do.
That's very close to the triple aggro lineup.
Yeah, so if you want to do that, if that is a triple aggro lineup, and if you want to run it, I would be scared of it. I don't have reps on those decks. I don't like playing those decks. So I'm not going to play it, but it would be totally reasonable.
Would it be out of line to say it would be a mistake not to register the card Stony Suppressor in this
aggro lineup?
Oh no! Just in general, in this tournament.
That's fair.
Stony
I definitely don't blame you. I don't blame you on being on level 1 and playing some solid. This tournament has a lot of variance. You're going to play against. There's a lot of people in it. You're going to play. You have to win all your matches. So it can be good to, instead of making a take, just play the best decks.
Yeah.
Just trying.
Yeah, that wasn't a rhetorical question. I genuinely don't know.
I don't think it's necessarily a mistake, though. I am going to recommend it.
Yeah.
As I have,
because that's how I feel as well. I feel like I want to play 2 decks with it.
I am going to play Stony Suppressor, and I was very close to registering 2 Stony Suppressor decks until this morning when I saw this deck.
Yeah, which we immediately tried to put Stony Suppressor in, and then we're like, that probably
this is awful.
Work.
Yeah. And maybe by the time the tournament rolls around,
we'll have found a way.
We'll have figured it out.
Life finds a way.
Maybe someone will finally figure out my dream of making Aphelios Crescendum work, into
Stony
Suppressor.
I mean, if there's any deck, it's this one probably. But
I just want getting Stony Suppressor off of Crescendum
to
happen. I want it to be good. I want to see. Well, I can't see obviously the look on my opponent's face, but I want
you want to see the emote on your opponent's deck.
There you go. Yeah, I want to see the Nocturne Kaiba exploding emote as soon as I drop that.
The Lulu sucking all the value out of that grape.
Oh my god,
it's a lot of value.
It's a lot of value. All right. I think that's our general stance on the seasonal tournament. Once again, if you are not qualified for the seasonal tournament, then I highly recommend you play that Last Chance Gauntlet, which is going to be on Friday.
Yeah, it's a great chance to qualify, and it's a heck of a lot of fun.
Amen. Yeah, and I'll be posting an article that's talking about specifically the Last Chance Gauntlet, and obviously we'll be in the Discord and all that. So if you want to talk to us about it, feel free to hop into the Discord. I'd be happy to converse about it. But we're running out of time for that. So I think it's time to get on to
listener
questions for the week, starting with our question of the week.
Boom.
Can we get the drum roll? Where's my drum roll? All right. Our question of the week comes from Cloud Aisha.
You did not help me out with that one.
I never do. I'll be honest. I never drum roll.
Cloud Aisha asks, lately I've heard some streamers say that Riot needs to quickly develop an esports scene for the game or it will die. They say that instead of just casual one-off tournaments, Riot needs to start focusing on actual pro play. Do you think that an esports scene would heighten Runeterra's popularity? Do you believe that Riot is being too slow to act on it, or do you think they're moving at the right pace? This one's obviously really topical with the seasonal tournament coming up. So what do you guys think? How have you thought Riot has handled the esports scene so far?
The recent trend of Magic, the trajectory of Magic the Gathering has really clearly shown how important a competitive scene is to a game. It is so huge for there to be people that are incentivized to make content, to be incentivized to play a lot, to be incentivized to grow your community by creating a fun and interactive community of their own, like us. We start. I mean, honestly,
seriously, it's just like
I got to Masters I got to Masters for the first time because I wanted to get into the seasonal tournament. Like that was kind of what got me to just started being serious about it, and then wanting to make a podcast like this. And that's a really important incentive. And one of the best things about playing card games like this is getting to be in a community, and that really helps grow the community. I think that Riot is moving at a good pace. I think it could be faster, and I do really hope that they support it more because obviously I love it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I've heard the discussion a lot between like how it's operated now is essentially like anyone could play. There's not that much money in it for any given person, but it's available to anyone, right? Like anyone can win the seasonal tournament, right?
Anyone can win the last chance qualifier.
If you're at home, like you can
get
make the
bronze,
Masters,
and if
you can win. You can
and if
play
you're
the
bronze,
last chance gauntlet.
You can put the work
win,
in, and
right?
you can get there. Yeah,
anyone can win the seasonal tournament. It's not an invite only with only the top 16 pros or whatever. If you look at like League of Legends or whatever, right? Like, you know, you can't just go play in the LCS or whatever your, you know, professional game scene is or whatever. You can't just go play in the competitive scene because you aren't on a team, right? Like, and card games usually have these like open qualifier things as well as some invite only stuff. And I would like to see Riot start promoting some invite only stuff. I don't want the open tournaments to go away at all, but I would love to see Riot start promoting certain figures in the community and like, you know, maybe start sponsoring some streams or maybe start sponsoring some events where they have tournaments that are 16 players invite only. And
there are tournaments like that right now, but I don't think that they're specifically
community
by Riot.
driven.
Exactly. They're community driven, not Riot driven. And obviously community driven tournaments can't really provide the type of income that a professional card game player would need, right? Like when you think of being a professional Legends of Runeterra player, you don't think about, you know, I need to win the seasonal tournament to pay rent. You think like right now, the only money in the scene is through content, and it's not a lot, right? So it's impossible, I think, at this point for, I think that the Legends of Runeterra community supports like 1, 2, maybe 3 Legends of Runeterra, quote unquote, pros who their job is to play Legends of Runeterra and like stream it or whatever. And I would like to see that number go up, I think. And I think it will with time as the game gets more popular. And I have faith in Riot, especially as an esport, just the company, from what I've seen them do with like League of Legends and Valorant and stuff like that. But yeah, I hope that it continues in a similar direction, but just keeps trending upward.
Yeah. So I think that you kind of touched on it a little bit, but the two big approaches, the open or closed, like the open being seasonal tournament, it's accessible to everyone, and closed being sponsored by Riot, these 30 people, 32 people, whatever, you know, bracket tournament, great. And there's pros and cons to both.
Or winners of previous seasonal tournaments,
right, exactly.
like whatever,
And there's pros and cons of both. Like the open style gets more people excited, and like you said, Noble, I personally also would never have gotten to Masters if there hadn't been this incentive, this seasonal tournament incentive.
I would have just I wouldn't have cared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would have just kept hitting plat 2 and then stopping when it felt vaguely difficult. Like, because that's what I was doing before. And now I actually want to get to Masters. I want to try. I want to put in all this work. And the problem with that is we don't have sort of figureheads in the community as much with just the open. Like that's why
we're still growing.
Yeah.
Because this tournament
who would those people be?
This tournament, you have to go 10-0 to win. It does not reward consistency.
No, you can't.
It's not like
your income cannot be solely I'm going to win the seasonal tournament.
Yeah.
It's
not going 4-1 and then I qualify for the next seasonal tournament. Even that would reward consistency. But now you have to grind the whole season to make it there, and then 10-0. Like,
and
this cannot be your plan.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I think the stem of the argument is like Riot can't support 1,000 professional Legends of Runeterra players. Like they can't pay for that, obviously. So in order for there to be 1,000 people who feel like they have a chance at winning, it needs to be open, right? And because of that, the tournament has to be hard. And so any one person, no matter if they're the best player in the world by a lot, can't have that be the main source of their income. There's no way anyone would make enough money to really survive, right? So
like the best players in this tournament have like a 1% chance of winning it. And that's insane. 10 times higher than the average.
That's probably much higher than anyone has. Is a 1%, right? Yeah. So, or you can have like 30 players, like 32 players. Riot Games could easily support the living wage of 32 people. By
consistently
playing, and
that's
not
how
have like weekly pro week or whatever.
And that's not necessarily how I want it to be. I don't want them to choose 32 people and then like do an MPL thing, but like
there's some sort of balance that
with
should
them.
be
They
struck.
can be different people, but
I would love to have an elite class of players who have jerseys or teams, or I would love to have TSM or CLG or these various
Channel Fireball
already
for
Riot
Magic
Games
people.
associated teams and esport teams grow into the Legends of Runeterra scene and try and help it develop. And then, you can have the invite only for show tournaments that happen every set when a new set comes out or whatever for promotion or whatever. But I really hope that the seasonal tournaments
the biggest thing that I think we're currently missing, I love almost everything about this. I think the one thing that we're really missing in this pro environment right now is name recognition.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what we need to add
Yeah.
for the picture to be complete. We need
no shame to anyone, but I could not tell you the people that were in the top 8 of the last seasonal tournament in any of the regions.
Yeah,
people need to have someone to root for and people to be excited to see.
Yeah,
absolutely. Fans need someone to be a fan over, and right now there aren't any of those.
Because for every person who's going to play in this tournament, there's at least 1,000 who aren't gonna
and barely
barely
missed.
Yeah, as a consequence, we won't care about the tournament because there's nothing to really watch. They're not playing it.
Yeah, and it also really increases viewership for events when there are notable players playing in them, whether they be streamers or pros. And usually there's a crossover there, but it sucks when you turn on the seasonal tournament broadcast, the esports broadcast,
and you don't know any of the people.
And I don't know any of the people. I would like to even see a familiar face. Even somebody who I know is a top ranked NA player. If I just randomly saw like BBG or whatever playing, I would root for him because I know the name.
Yeah.
Anyone whose name I knew, if I saw, I would be rooting for, right? But I don't know anyone's name really. I know like a couple.
Yeah, we know tags and stuff, but and
even that, I don't know anything about BBG other than the name BBG. I would love to see a panel that's like, this is BBG. His name is Austin, he's from Texas or whatever. I don't know any of these things, right? I don't know any of these things about him. Maybe he's 58. That'd be cool. I don't know. Maybe he's an MIT grad student. That'd be cool.
BBG, if you're listening, you can do whatever
he's 12.
You want.
Maybe he's
That'd
12.
Be even more
That'd
interesting.
Be sick, right?
Yeah.
I would love to see player cards about this is this person, or TSM BBG or whatever. That'd be sweet. I would immediately care more if there was just a TSM in front of somebody's name.
Yeah,
even if I didn't
that's
know
always true.
Yeah, absolutely. Or CLG or whatever. Absolutely.
Totally.
Exactly.
All right. Next question.
Yeah, I think that's
take it from the top at this point.
Move on, indeed. So this one comes from Snot Info Blah. I hope I got that one right. This one's for Hugh. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on Anivia Control versus Feel the Rush. Played that matchup in a while?
I think the question's asking which one would you play, not the matchup of Anivia into Feel the Rush.
I agree. I read it as the other way, but I agree. Your interpretation is much better.
And if I had to pick one, I think I would definitely choose, unless you found something that I haven't, which is, by the way, totally possible. But I do think I would pick FTR Control. It feels a little more
has a good plan,
consistent, has a stronger plan. I think there's a lot of angles to attack Anivia. Anivia has so many awkward draws.
I think consistent is the best way to describe it. Is that Feel the Rush feels much more consistent.
Yeah, exactly. Like the amount of times I've just sort of like drawn a hand full of cards that do nothing until like turn 7 in Anivia is way too often.
Yeah, and especially because the TF Fizz lineups have started putting 3 copies of Suit Up in their deck.
Anivia can't beat Suit Up.
If you play Fizz into Suit Up, Anivia Control is dead. They're just dead. Like it's the earliest they can kill it is like turn 4 with the second Avalanche or whatever. And that's as good as it gets, I think.
Yeah.
So
turn 3 Avalanche, turn 4 Avalanche.
I think is as good as it could possibly.
Imagine if they have another Suit Up at that point. It's over.
Yeah, it's over. And if you don't have that, it's like turn 6 with a full 9 mana ruination.
Meanwhile, they've been probably playing creatures that aren't Fizz.
Yeah, and you're probably losing to Ballistic Bot in the meantime or whatever.
Something.
Yeah, so you're totally smoked. So I think I'm off Anivia for this weekend. But I would not blame anyone for playing Feel the Rush if they have a particular reason. But I wouldn't recommend Feel the Rush in a vacuum. So I would recommend having a reason that you're playing Feel the Rush. Yeah. But there certainly are those.
I still think they're both viable, but yes, have a reason.
Absolutely agree. All right. Twilight asks, what decks do you expect to be run in the upcoming seasonal? I think we've pretty solidly covered that. They also want to know your thoughts regarding some people in the community calling for nerfs because X deck that was basically tier 1. So
ban
basically
Bostopus. That card is busted.
They're asking like, how do you feel about communities calling for bans when things have been meta for not all that long? So e.g. Zap Spray Fin being deemed broken because of Go Hard, but not before that. TF is insane and TF Aphelios, but TF was fine before that. And now people are calling for TF nerfs. Like, how do you feel about the general community? Like, things need to happen structure.
I think part of why this happens is so-and-so loses to a card 3 times in a row on ladder. They go on like some social media platform to
talk about it,
to vent, and then like everyone piles on to vent as well, and then it turns into this weirdly toxic echo chamber of like, wait a second, guys, is this too good?
I remember a very popular Twitter thread about how Lee Sin was a problem and should be banned, like quite recently. And Lee Sin is so far from the decks that people are talking about as an issue now. Like, this metagame moves very fast. And yes, people have a gut reaction to that was unfair. And the game is really diverse, which means that there are just a lot of decks out there. Your decks are going to lose to some of them, and it's not going to feel fair. Tom Kench does not feel like a fair card when it's in play. You're like, holy crap. This thing kills one of my units every turn. And then you realize it's been 6 turns and they haven't won the game. And then they die.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Sometimes not.
Sometimes not.
Hopefully. Yeah.
But, and there's also and part of having such a diverse metagame is that there's going to be a lot of weird decks that you've never seen before. And there's so many decks that your deck will have an abysmal matchup against many decks that just exist. And you will come up against those from time to time. And it will suck.
I think that a real big thing is that people don't want to try and beat the new decks either. They're usually just mad when there's a new best deck. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And this is not everyone. And I'm definitely generating some large blanket statements here. But a lot of people just like, if there's a new best deck and it's the new best deck and it keeps beating all the old best decks, well, clearly this deck must be broken. Well, no, it's not. The meta just hasn't adapted to it yet. You need to give it a day. And there's a lot of that.
Or 3.
Yeah, a day or 3, but like 3 days is like the maximum gestation period for a meta in this game. So
yeah, absolutely.
So
Riot
I think
is
give it time.
Doing a very good job that the meta is changing this often and this frequently. And yeah, they do nerf cards when they see over a long period of time that they're problematic. But you shouldn't gut check it because you know what? I really like the card Twisted Fate. That card is maybe close to needing some kind of nerf. I just don't know what that nerf would be, and that's another one of our questions, I think.
Yes, I think it is.
Yeah. So I guess let's get right into that one then. This one comes from Sad Stove. They ask, I've heard grumbles of a TF nerf. Do you think a nerf is needed? Regardless, how do you think it would be nerfed? I guess I'll start. Right now, going with no. I do not think it needs a nerf. I think that it is. I've said it before. It was the cornerstone of the meta. It still is. It's gotten to be more present. And I think that if the meta were to exist in its exact form right now for an extended period of time, I would say that probably we would need to see a nerf. But I think that Shurima is so close. And if Twisted Fate continues to be dominant post Shurima, then I'm willing to give in that Twisted Fate probably needs to see a change of some kind. But until then, I want to at least wait till Shurima comes out. I think Twisted Fate's probably the best card in the game, but once again, I've always felt like it's a really fair best card to have in the game.
There always needs to be a best card. There always needs to be a tier 1, and it just can't change every day.
I don't hate playing against Twisted Fate. Yeah, it feels like a fun card to play against, to play around.
It is kind of hopeless when they have him flipped.
Yeah, when he flips, you just lose.
You should have played Mystic Shot.
But even then, sometimes you just don't. I don't know. I've had plenty of. I'm not gonna say a lot, but I've had a
good few.
A weird amount of times where they flip TF, and I'm just like, I don't really care.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that happens, which is cool.
And another part of that is like, yes, they flipped their champion. They played a 4-mana card, and then they drew 8 cards with it in play. Maybe they were winning no matter what. They just drew a lot of cards.
And you couldn't answer the first threat, let alone any of the 8 cards they drew.
2/2 in the time it took them to draw 8 cards.
Yeah, it's kind of good that card ends the game then, because you can be like, all right, we can move on. Like, the games need to end, and Twisted Fate does it quickly when he flips, which is great. I'm glad the game ends.
If he were to get nerfed, I think the first step is just take away power.
I disagree entirely. I think the first thing is make it 9 instead of 8.
Cards. Sure. Cards. 9 is just such a weird number. I don't think they would do it.
It is a weird number,
10
but like
so high.
10 is really high, but also like
I don't know. People are flipping TF pretty fast.
A 1/2, like
I mean, you don't really care about the body already, right?
You don't, but there's a
it is much worse.
There's a limit to how bad you can make the body without it, like because
I agree.
And this is kind of a game design thing, but game feel, like the feel of the card is still important.
It would be pretty bad. I don't think you could make an X1 that would just completely gut him. I don't think that I think that changing the amount of cards would make him worse than removing a power. Is my take on Twisted Fate right now. So I think that the smallest nerf that you could do to Twisted Fate would be take away a power.
Yeah, but looking at that, a champion that costs 4 mana being a 1/2 is, I think, a little untenable. I don't think that is a thing that should exist for that.
That's pretty fair.
And I think that the card would need a rework if you're going to nerf it, and I don't think that should happen.
I think that
I think we should buff some other cards and then see where we are.
Maybe take the spell mana away from blue card. That'd be a pretty good nerf.
Yeah, but they're already pretty well balanced. I do use blue card a lot, but that's because it's a card.
Blue card has become the best one, so maybe the spell mana could go away and it would still be good, and that would be a good nerf.
That would be an okay nerf. I will say that I've found myself just blue carding for the card and just wasting the spell mana a lot.
Yeah, so it's
me
not
too.
huge.
But sometimes you play a blue card and then you get to play an extra Aphelios weapon or whatever.
I'd much rather they tune up other cards and tweak them out of that way. And like we said, Shurima's coming out. Like, it's a lot of new champions. So,
the meta's about to get shaken up in a big way.
Yeah, probably. I don't want, I was thinking, you could rework TF to be like a 3 mana 2/2 that does something totally different. And I don't want that. I really like his design. Don't want that to change.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
I think if he's still broken post Shurima, we might need to come back and revisit
Still
this
good.
conversation.
I don't think he's broken right now.
Yeah, I agree. All right.
Play Mystic Shot, people. This is your fault for playing TF Aphelios, whose only plan to answer this card is a challenger.
All right. Mordekaiser asks,
that trades with it when it already drew a card. I'm sorry, Alex.
On recent matchup charts, we see that Lee's Zoe supposedly has terrible matchups all over the board, but people are still playing it to great success. Do you think the win rates are accurate, or do you think they're skewed over by worse players, or perhaps other reasons? So there's another question, a little follow up right after that, but let's start there. Lee Zoe, what do you think? It sounds like people, according to him, it has bad matchups across the board, but people are still winning with it, which I wrote about the deck being just abundantly powerful because of its varied plans a while ago when the deck just burst onto the scene, and I stand by all my claims about the deck initially. It has such a powerful plan, and it always has a good plan, at least good, even if it's not maybe favored. The deck is just abundantly powerful. It's very consistent. I think that even if you have theoretically bad matchups, the fact that your deck is so consistent really makes up for a lot of percentage points in bad matchups. Just being more consistent than your opponent means you're going to steal more games, or you're just going to win games where they fumble or whatever. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I think it's a deck that really leverages player skill as well. So that probably has something to do with it. I still think it's a great deck, and I still think people should play it.
And it also has pretty diverse threats and answers. The fact that
you can tune it so much for whatever you need to beat.
Eye of the Dragon is such a...
That card's messed up.
That card's
messed up.
It does everything.
Why does it have a tune?
Yeah, so
it's so good. The first time I played that card, I was like, wait, it has a tune.
Yeah, because Uzina's played it, and all of a sudden, they're scared of it. It's a beater now, in addition to a value engine. It gains life.
So I think this is referring to the matchup table I posted in our Discord that has Zoe Lee being great against 3 decks. Those decks are Draven Ezreal, Teemo Burn. Sorry, I'm scrolling back and forth, and Deep, and then bad, terrible, or even against everything else. Oh, except good against Aphelios TF. And that's probably what they're talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that people are just not playing a ton of this deck right now. That matchup data may be old or weird or skewed. I think that there's just been it was the best deck for a while, and there's been a series of decks that targeted it. That doesn't mean it's not still powerful.
Yeah,
absolutely agree.
Also,
I think it's kind of like
favor.
Feel the Rush or the old Lee Zed deck where it's
those players just need to get better at drawing Lee Sin. I don't know.
It's powerful, and it has a good plan. And I think if you're taking into a specific meta, it's a good choice. I think it is a better gauntlet deck than a ladder deck right now, for sure.
Because
you can specifically you can ban something, and you can build your deck knowing that you're banning something, so you can build your deck to more efficiently attack what you're trying to attack. And the deck is a really good shell to try and attack stuff with. I
think it might be that Deny's bad right now. That might
Deny's
be
pretty bad right now, and that's can be a thing
with. That's the thing with Fiora Shen too. While Fiora Shen is very good, but Deny feels bad. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, the Deny part of that deck is not that great, which is interesting because usually Fiora Shen is good when Deny is good, but
yeah.
Anyway, okay, Mordekaiser also asked, I see a lot of people talking about triple aggro. Do you think it's a legit good option? Do you see any weaknesses? I know we talked about this a little bit. I think it's definitely a good option. I would think about it more than I'm going to play triple aggro and beat the people who aren't prepared for aggro, because everyone's going to be prepared for blanket aggro. So I think that you need to have a more specific plan than I'm going to beat people who aren't prepared for aggro.
I want to beat people who are not.
I'm all here for it.
Prepared for large trampules.
Yeah,
whatever you pick in this seasonal tournament, I think the most important thing is that you have a good reason to do whatever it is you happen to be doing.
You should be
confident about your reasoning.
Yeah. You should be able to explain why you're playing the list you're playing. And not everybody should play the same deck list because there's way more than one. They're presumably infinite.
It's what you're good with. If those are the decks you're comfortable on, please play triple aggro.
Good lineups for this tournament. So play the decks you're comfortable with, but have a plan. You should be able to explain why you're playing these 3 decks, what you're planning on banning, why you built these decks in certain ways before you submit them. You should go into your, open the deck up and be like, I'm banning Fiora. Like, are there any cards in this deck that are like really only here because they're good against Fiora? Take them out, right? Like, you're not going to play against Fiora if you're banning it. So
and one thing I would like to stress, if you're playing an aggro lineup, please still put TF Fizz in your lineup. It is an aggro deck. It goes in your lineup, fits the theme, and you need to play a TF deck.
I agree. Hard agree. All right. Time for our last question of the day. This is a fun one. This time, Dragon asks, what are your spiciest hot takes?
I was going to come here with a really hot take, which was TF Aphelios is bad. And then we finally found lists
that are good.
And because at first I was like, it has a great value engine, and then the engine just sort of peters out, and then the game doesn't end because you can't remove champions and you have no reach. There's no burn in the deck other than TF red card. Yeah. That's not going to kill your opponent.
I'm ready to say, I don't think TF Aphelios is that good. I don't think that you should play it in this tournament. I think it's so easy to attack. You can easily go over the top of it. You can easily... And then, like, most of your matchups are like coin flips. It's pretty classic mid-range in that it just, like, it's decent against aggro decks. It's pretty good, very good against mid-range decks. The thing about Aphelios, and I've been wanting to say this this statement on the podcast since last episode, if you're trying to play fair, regular Legends of Runeterra, you're not doing any crazy synergies, you're not going over the top, it is going to beat you. It is a very good Legends of Runeterra card. It is a 3/3 that draws a card. It's going to trade for a creature. It's going to play another thing. If you don't kill it, it's going to flip pretty quickly and generate a stream of value. Like,
it will win an average game.
Yeah, it will win the average game of Legends of Runeterra. That's just how Aphelios is. He's in the middle. You need to either be going massively under him, killing them with a Teemo or a Fizz or a Zoe or a Lee Sin.
Going over them.
Yeah.
With a Darius or a Sejuani.
Or a Field Rush or whatever.
Yeah, flipping a champion, like we said, because his cards do not interact very well with champions. Both Grafton and Calibrum either can't target champions or are worse when they target champions.
Yep.
And you don't have direct removal in that deck because you're playing Targon and Bilgewater, means that your plan can be a champion. And a lot of decks' plans are champions, as it turns out.
Yeah, no joke. They really are. My spiciest hot take. This is hard. I never see every time.
You're not the hot take guy.
I'm usually not. I'm usually the guy that reins in the hot takes.
Yeah.
And then when we're right, we get to make fun of you, and when we're wrong, we never talk about it again.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really a win-win. Yeah, it's really a win-win. Let's see. I think that my spiciest hot take is that Lux is a champion that should see play in the meta in some form.
Tom Kench Lux. That was a deck, right? Someone posted that at some point. No. That was the deck list that got posted, right?
Really? When?
I swear this is in our deck list thread.
Our
Discord.
Oh, really?
And people were like talking about like this seems sweet. And I remember wanting to play it.
Was it Aphelios Lux?
No,
I remember seeing Aphelios Lux.
It was Kench Lux.
Holy moly!
I think it was Kench Lux.
That's pretty wild.
I just want to see
maybe
more.
I'm wrong.
I want to see
wrong.
Lux decks in general. I don't know. The card is like absolutely bonkers in Expedition, I think, and I understand that Lux is bad because like Demacia is kind of probably pretty bad, but like maybe Shurima's going to give us some nice 6-mana spells that we can put in our Lux deck.
And also the thing that Demacia is good for right now is Stony Suppressor, and Lux wants spells.
It's not. I don't know.
But I do think
she
a 5-mana
does.
spell with a Stony Suppressor in play and Lux. You flipper.
I'm not.
My God.
I'm not kidding when I say I literally considered that.
Two
exact
2-drops. 2 Aphelios guns. Flips your Lux
That
out.
is
oh my God,
so
people.
sick.
We
There
did
it
it.
is.
Ooh.
I'm not kidding when I say that is exactly the thing.
I'm playing this deck.
that I thought of.
It does unironically give you at least some payoff for casting spells into your own Stony Suppressor. It's like, well, at least my Lux is better.
That's pretty funny.
Not saying it's good, but it is hot.
But it is better.
Spicy.
Alrighty. So thank you everyone for listening. Good luck to everyone out there in your last chance gauntlet or seasonal tournament or whatever you are doing this weekend. If you are interested in joining the Discord, where we constantly are talking about the meta, the evolutions of the meta, you want to know our perfect updated lists for the moment before we click submit, make sure you join our Discord. I'm also going to be, if you're playing the Last Chance Gauntlet, I'm going to be writing that article, which is going to be in the description wherever you are listening to this. And with that, I think we will see you all on the next episode of Champion Select.